First time I heard Jaco Pastorius, I remember thinking, this sounds really weird. My teacher at the time showed me Weather Report's album Heavy Weather, and although I pretended to like it at the time, I found it very difficult to get into. But I stuck with it because my ego didn't want people to think I was some kind of Philistine. So I listened further, I learned some of the bass lines, and eventually I began to appreciate it. He was pushing the boundaries of what was possible on the bass guitar, more than anybody who came before or after. His technique, his speed, the way he set his instrument up, and most of all the way he composed music, made him stand out, and his recognition as one of the most important bass players of all time is perfectly rated, in my opinion. One day, I sat down to learn one of his most difficult pieces, Teen Town. Nothing will put your technique, speed, and mastery of rhythm to the test more than this. It took me many years to play it convincingly. It's one of his most iconic lines, but it sounds so very, very weird. So why is that? Well, it's not just one thing, but let's start with the harmony. All of the chords in this piece are dominant chords. Usually when a piece is made up of entirely dominant chords, we call it dominant harmony. This can be found in blues and funk, but here it's different. The chords are C dominant 13, A13, F13, and D13. The chords that are being played here have no relationship to one another. They are all from different keys. And what's more is they're a third apart. This basically means that they are 3 or 4 frets apart from each other. They are also dominant 13 chords, so they are extended as far as they will go. A dominant 13 chord contains all the notes of the scale. For example, C13 contains the notes C, E, G, B flat, D, F, and A, which is all the notes in the key of F major. If we line up all of the notes from all 4 chords, we get every note in the musical alphabet, apart from G sharp, so it's hard to discern a key center from all that. I think the best way to view this is that each chord is its own key center. Thankfully, we don't hear all of these notes at the same time, as it's already sounding quite complex and strange. Joe Zawinul is playing keys, and he's just using the essential notes here. That would be the 3rd, the flat 7, the 9th, and the 13th. Without the bass line, they sound like this. Which I'm sure you'll agree is a very uneasy sound. So the root is not being played, the 5th is not being played, and the 11th is not being played. The 5th and the 11th are not important for these chords, but the root is, and that's where the bass comes in. I won't show you the whole thing because that will take forever. I'm just going to break down the first phrase because that alone reveals many interesting ideas. If you want to learn to play the whole thing, then this video is probably the best one that I've found. So this first phrase plays over the first 2 chords. It sounds like this. So over the C13 chord, he plays the root, the octave, back to the root, flat 7, back to the root, and then to the 5th. So for the first part of this bass line, the C is the pedal note. So over a dominant chord, these notes are pretty standard. What's interesting is it comes in on the 2nd 16th note of the bar. So straight away we're feeling some rhythmic tension. The next part we play the root again. Then we do a hammer on from the 1st fret to the 2nd fret. That's the flat 3rd or sharp 9 and the 3rd of the chord. It's really common to hear this being played over a dominant chord. We get tension with the 1st note and then resolution with the 2nd note. So the flat 3rd is not contained within the chord. That just creates tension and then resolution when we get to the 3rd. Then we've got the 5th, 6th, back to the 5th, then the 3rd. Pretty standard note choices over a dominant chord, but then something really interesting happens. We get a D and a C sharp. You could say the D is the 9th and the C sharp is the flat 9. So the flat 9 sounds very dissonant over that chord. However, just 1/16th note later and the chord changes to an A dominant 7, which creates some kind of resolution. Still sounds pretty strange. Have a listen. Pretty cool. So the last bit of the phrase over the A dominant chord is, so that is a root, 6, and 9. So it finishes on that 9, which is part of the chord, but it's quite a jazzy way to kind of resolve that lick. So I could analyze this whole bass line, but I think the video might get too long if I do that. I definitely encourage you to try this bass line. It will push your technique to the limits. And if this is too easy for you, maybe try the Marcus Miller version. Good luck with that one.